Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you to offer some words of positive encouragement. Before we dive into the topic, which is how to stand your ground, I want to share with you a catchphrase that hubby and I have, which is called the holiday reversal. And this came from our times when we would go to the beach on a holiday and we would say to ourselves, okay, we better get ready because there's not going to be any parking, the beach is going to be packed, but let's just do it because it's a holiday and we want to enjoy our time at the beach. And then we would end up at the beach and it was the holiday reversal. Nobody was there. The beach was empty. And it was the holiday reversal because most people thought that the beach would be packed. So they stayed home. Now, sometimes we do have the double reversal where we think that it's going to be empty because it's a holiday and we're banking on the holiday reversal, but it's a double reversal. And other people are there because they thought it would be empty also. And the reason I'm sharing this concept with you, the holiday reversal, is because that is going to come into play with my recommendations and my advice for standing your ground. And what I mean is this: what I'm about to share with you is probably the exact opposite type of advice, tips, or strategies or techniques that you think that I might offer. So let's just take a recent interaction that I had, and this is an actual thing that happened to me. And it turns out that I was talking to somebody about a very hot topic button, which is, I don't even know if this channel allows me to speak about it. I mean, this platform, which is abortion. And I realize that that is a very divisive topic. And my position on this channel is not to do anything more than to tell you how this unfolded and how I didn't handle it correctly in my view, and I could have handled it better, and I could have stood my ground in a different way. So let me give you the scenario. Somebody said to me, well, the Roe versus Wade sure turned our country and our freedom back, decades. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they started chanting, my body, my rights, my body, my rights. And they got louder and louder and angrier and angrier. And I realized at that point that the emotions were running high. Number one, I should have let things cool down because that wasn't going to be the kind of treacherous waters to wade in right at that moment. But I did try to calm things down. And I said, oh my gosh, I know this is such a divisive topic. Why do you think it is so divisive? I actually think that's a very good question to ask. And the person was already heated, couldn't really have the conversation. And then I asked another question. Well, let me know how you define elective abortion. What does that mean to you? And at that point, the person stood up and said, I'm done. I'm not going to have this conversation, and left. So where I want to go with this is, generally speaking, asking questions is a great way of standing your ground. What I seek to do is to have a person tell me every single thing about their position, their point of view, their opinion, their experience before I dive in and stand my ground. Because what happens, and I probably did say something like, I can't believe you think that, I probably did dive in a little too quickly saying, I have a completely opposite view. And I broke my own rule of standing my ground, which is first to ask, and listen, listen, listen. Let's put a scenario out that might not be as a hot topic, probably is. And let's talk about cooties. And let's say you have a family member that is all gung-ho and on board with becoming a human pincushion. And you've been, at odds with your loved one because you cannot believe that they think that, and they cannot believe your position. So rather than have this situation where you are having a very intense conversation, maybe even arguing, walking out of the room as this person did. Sometimes people are slamming doors, throwing pillows or something. I've heard all sorts of things, to the point of people getting divorced over this. And again, that I can't make a judgment on any of that other than to express that that's how far it goes. So in a situation where you have two opposing points of view, here is a way that you could stand your ground, which is a holiday reversal, because you're actually not going to be putting forth your opinion until the very, very end. So let me give you some words and phrases that may be helpful for you. And again, if you're dealing with an irrational person like I was, none of my tips or tricks are actually going to do the trick. I feel that that individual was carrying some other kind of wounds or hurt or anger and was not in a position to actually have a conversation. So the first thing would be to say, for example, tell me more about your position. Tell me more about how you came to that conclusion. I'd like to understand how your perspective was developed, and tell me more about your position. Use phrases like that where you are seeking to get more information from them. Now, let me tell you why I believe this is such a brilliant approach. Number one, you are engaging them, and that shows that they gives them the opportunity to share. You're not going to interrupt them. You're not going to argue with them, and you're not going to stand your ground at that point. You literally are going to ask, and listen, listen, listen. And as they are giving you their opinion, their view, their perspective, you are going to say, yes, go on. That's another phrase that you can say. I see, I hear what you're saying. And then you can say things like, what else? What else can you share that will help me understand your point of view? Now, here's why this is so effective on many levels. Number one, you are able to gather information that later you can build your own argument against. You don't have to think on the spot. You don't have to spew out all of your, positions and thoughts and opinions and information and all of that. You literally can calm your own self down. You can listen, really listen, and hear what they are saying. And sometimes you are going to hear flaws in their own argument. Here's the second reason it's so powerful. So number one, you're gathering information. Number two, you're allowing them to vent, to share, to explain, to pontificate, to persuade, to coerce, whatever they want to do. You are giving them the floor. And I'm telling you, you might think, well, Peggy, I'm giving them all the power. I'm just sitting back silent. Here's the holiday reversal. It's the exact opposite. You have the power because you are sitting quietly and just nodding your head saying, with a few phrases such as, I see, go on, I hear what you're saying, what else? And it almost can be slightly intimidating for them because they realize they are kind of on the spot and they can't punch back. They have to actually come up with reasons why they believe that. So that's kind of number three. They may fall into their own trap. They may start to say things and realize that as they stumble and fall, they may realize, oh my gosh, my argument does not hold water. I really don't have that strong of an argument. I don't have that much to go on. My opinion is a little flimsy because I'm just saying things that I can't really back up. And they will see that and experience it for themselves. Maybe not at that moment, but over time, I guarantee you will plant a seed. They will stay up late at night. They'll be thinking about, what did I say? How did I say it? I wonder if I really believe that. And over time, they may start to change their opinion on things because you did not interrupt and try to force your opinion and, stand your ground very kind of aggressively, where now you're just basically in a bar brawl, maybe a non-physical fist fight, so to speak, and no one is listening to anyone else. Tempers are flaring. But when you calm things down and you allow the person to speak, you encourage them to speak, you actually are standing your ground in a quiet, dignified way that is full of integrity. You are not agreeing with them. You are not really accepting what they have to say, but you are listening and you are showing them the respect for their position. Now, here's where it gets a little better. So you've said, what else? Go on. I see. I'd like to hear more. And you can ask things like, how did you come up with that idea? And one of my number one things that I ask is, how do you define? So how do you define immunity? How do you define experts if you're talking about cooties and so forth? And you can actually ask questions where they have to come up with the answers. And I'm telling you, they may get frustrated and stand up and leave or say, I don't want to talk about this anymore. That means you've gotten through. That means that you have planted the seeds. You can put a little tick in your winning column because you have gotten through to them. And without arguing with them, without pointing out their flaws, they themselves are getting uncomfortable because they know that their argument doesn't hold water. Now, if you want to take that to step two, actually, before we go to step two, let me summarize. So number one, you listen, you ask, and you give encouragement like, I see, go on, what else? And then because you're allowing them to speak, you're diffusing the tension. You also are gathering information so that when it comes your time to give your opinion, you have everything that you can speak and answer because you've already gotten their opinion. Otherwise, you're sort of, flying blind. And then number three, you've allowed them to have the floor. And that also, number four, reduces their desire to fight back because you've already let them have their say. So you let them have their say as long as it takes. It might be more than one conversation. I also recommend keeping these conversations very short, no more than like 5 to 7 minutes, 10 minutes max, because then things do spiral out of control. So I would keep this at a short amount of time. And an extra little tip that helps a lot is if you have these conversations in neutral ground. You're not at somebody's house, you're not driving in a car, you don't feel like they've got a one up on you, or like you're the man down because you're at their house. So I think going for a walk or being in a neutral place like at a restaurant is a really great way to have these conversations. So even with a loved one, I would not have these at home. I would definitely go out and have a walk. Okay, now after they've had their say, here's where you get to insert your way to stand your ground. And you can summarize what they say. You can say, all right, so if I understand you correctly, you believe this and that and the other thing, because you said this, that, and the other thing. Did I get it right? And they're going to go, wow, this person is really hearing me. I wonder if they agree with me now, because you've validated in a way that you've affirmed that you have heard them. And sometimes we have these, I'm just going to call them altercations or arguments or misunderstandings because we feel that we weren't heard. And your loved one, or even just a friend or an individual that you're having this conversation with, might push really strongly because you never repeated back what they said. So just repeating back what they said, I'm telling you, diffuses the tension. They can feel satisfied in their smug way, like, all right, that person heard what I said. And now is your entry. Now you say, my experience is different, or for example, or I see things differently, or just start right out and say, would you like to hear my view? And then you wait. You absolutely wait for them to either, swallow their pride and say, okay, I'd like to hear your view, or continue to be a bully, or maybe start to be a bully and say, no, I don't want to hear your point of view. You've put them on the spot. And if they are a rational individual who actually wants to listen to your conversation, and if they feel strongly enough about their position on fill in the blank, then they should be more than happy to hear your opinion. You might even say that if you really want to stand your ground a little more strongly. You can say, I hear your passion, and I know that you really believe in what you're saying. So you probably wouldn't have any difficulty listening to my point of view, would you? I just think these are great openers. And then point blank saying, would you like to hear my view on things? And if they say no, then don't give them your view. If they say no, then say, oh, okay. And you move on. All right. The wise words in the Bible say, don't cast your pearls before swine. But I love having those openers, such as, would you like to hear my experience? I see things differently. Would you care to hear my perspective, my point of view? Let me know if you'd like to hear how I think about this. So very friendly, very affable, nothing heated, nothing too pointed. And I admit, in the previous conversation that I gave you an example of, I was really hot under the collar as well. And that's why I said, wow, this is such a hot button topic. And the reason why I put out the question, why do you think this is so divisive, is because if people believe that it should be a slam dunk, that everybody should believe A, yet people who believe B, they come along. Why is it such a divisive topic if A is obviously the answer? I want them to say, well, it's because people have another point of view. And even though I did not get through to this individual because the conversation fell apart and they up and left, I know that I planted a seed. I am confident that in a period of time, over time, this individual, there's a little bit of a crack in the armor now, and they are going to be uncomfortable the next time they are having this conversation. They're going to remember some of the comments that I made, and I couldn't really get my point of view out, but just the fact that that conversation went so wrong, an individual, in my view, who has a strong conviction should be able to defend that position rationally and somewhat calmly, passionately, definitely, but without up and leaving. So that shows me that that person did not have a well thought out argument on this position that she felt so strongly about. So, what I want to also say is that it is possible that the person you're having the conversation with, they're not going to change their mind. It's unlikely that your words are going to change their mind. But I do believe that it is going to plant a seed and give them an opportunity over a period of time as they are confronted with other information or whatever might go on where they're thinking about this topic. They might just remember your words, and it might plant a seed that they are going to, that may have them change their perspective down the way. So this is how I recommend standing your ground. You can stand in dignity and integrity, knowing that you allowed that individual to share their opinion, just like you would like to have the courtesy of them listening to yours. Hey, that's even another phrase you could use. I've listened to your opinion and I want to thank you for sharing. Would you allow me the courtesy to share mine? And then you're very pleasant, you're not combative. And even if they tune you out, you have the opportunity to demonstrate by example that you are able to stand your ground with these hot button topics without crumbling, without shouting, without having the conversation break down. And if that's the person that gets up and leave, you are still standing your ground and you are still standing in dignity and integrity and showing by example. I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is let our life be an example, how we live our life, be an example of our values. I've done lots of videos on this channel about values, about thinking about what you value and living your life in according to your values. And that, again, is a shining example for others. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being on board. I look forward to seeing you again in an upcoming broadcast, always at the Healthy American at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, sometimes a little extra on the weekends. And I also have a free newsletter and Substack with information for you in the description box below. See you soon.